Welcome back. Now we would like to discuss some of the benefits and drawbacks of e-commerce in Taiwan, buying and selling things in Taiwan, in comparison with e-commerce, for example, from where we are from, the United States. Michael, in your experience, can you tell us about the different experiences you've had with buying in, for example, Taiwan, and also purchasing things and returning them in the United States or other country?
Yeah, well, actually I've had a little bit of experience with the UK with some cycling jerseys, as I mentioned. I can go into that. I think the first thing is, since we're in Taiwan, probably most of the time we purchase things in Taiwan. Recently, I think the government has enacted a law that anything that you buy and it's imported into Taiwan and the value is over 2,000 NT, you will pay a duty on it.
Okay, so before we go into any more, I would like to learn about this too. How is that working? So if you buy something from the UK that's 2,500, you are going to be charged an import tax? Is that what it's called?
I would say it's called customs duty. You're paying a duty fee. And I can give you a prime example of what happened to me. I bought a bicycle in the U.S. Oddly enough, it was from a Taiwanese guy who lives in Los Angeles, and it was a giant bike made in Taiwan. But he didn't like the color, and it had barely been used, and so the price was very good. So I had a friend of mine deliver the money to him. He shipped the bike to me, but I told him to ship it as a used bike, which it was in a sense, because he'd only had maybe 100 kilometers on it, so it was used.
Sure.
But he neglected to do that. And so I think the purchase price was $2,300. And so it exceeded the cutoff for whether you have to pay duty or not.
So it's $2,300 US dollars.
2,300, which would be well over the 2,000 NT. And
sure.
And so actually it's more than 2,000 NT. I think it's like $2,000, I believe. But at any rate,
well, you're saying the bicycle, you paid 2,000 US dollars for it,
right?
Which would be about 60,000 NT. Right.
Yeah. So, and I was hoping that if it was designated as a used bike, that I would eliminate any potential customs fee that might be necessary to get it shipped the rest of the way to me. As it turned out, I got a notice that I had to pay another around 6,000 NT to have the bike released from customs in Taoyuan and then shipped to me here in Wufeng.
That sounds like a big hassle.
It was a hassle, and I was not really happy about it because on the other end, the guy gave the bike to somebody to package, and they failed to note that it was a used bike. Therefore, I was taxed for buying a new bike. Okay, so that's the first thing. So it was okay. Aside from that, once I paid the fee, then it was over and done with. I've bought things also in Taiwan before. I think Taiwan, in my own personal opinion, does not provide a lot of protection for the consumer when the consumer buys something either online or from brick and mortar. I can cite an example. A friend of mine bought a pair of shoes in the past, and within 1 week the soles started to separate, and we took the shoes back. I believe it was before the 7 days actually, and they would not replace the shoes. They would only agree to re-glue the sole, and they did do that. However, the sole separated again, and my friend thought, well, now I've lost. I can't even wear these shoes anymore because the part's going to flop back and forth. So I think there's not a lot of protection for consumers here. I mean, if something bad happens on the 8th day, then you are just out of luck.
So I guess what it is you've got different types of consumer protection. The main type of consumer protection would be based on the laws that the government has enacted. And I think you said 7 days. If you buy something, you have 7 days to return it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And of course, I think we discussed this earlier. if you have a product that you want to return or have your money refunded, you may get a little bit of, hassle from the seller because maybe they've already deposited the money and they spent it on
Right.
something else, whatever
Right.
the case may be, and they may not really want to acknowledge that there's something wrong
Right.
and put the blame back on the consumer. Oh, you did something wrong, you didn't operate it correctly, and so on. On the other hand, now, if I compare with when I bought things online in the U.S., for example, I deal off and on with a company called Performance Bike, and I've bought bicycles from them, I bought clothing from them, and sometimes when I bought clothing, and I've had it shipped to Taiwan, the clothing did not fit properly, even though I tried to follow their sizing guide and so on. So I just kept the clothing here, and then 6 months later, or nearly a year later, when I go back to the U.S., I can take the clothing back to them. It still has the tags on it, and they just refund my money.
Cool.
They have an excellent consumer protection program. I bought a bicycle there when I lived there about 5 years ago. I bought a bicycle, and even though I wasn't particularly happy with the bicycle, I continued to ride it, and then I just decided I couldn't ride it any longer, and this was after about 7 or 8 months. I took the bicycle back, and they were willing to refund my money, but I said I would just prefer to take the purchase price from the original bike and apply it to a new bicycle, which I did do, and I was quite happy with that bike.
Right,
So,
I see.
normally in a lot of cases, if there's wear and tear and that sort of thing, the seller will not take it back, but they have a great program, and I'm sure some people take advantage of it. I did read the fine print, and I saw that, and my eyes just about popped out of my head that time, and I thought, oh my God, I can go ahead and take this back after 6 months. I thought, whoa, I've hit the mother load here.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. So there are advantages and disadvantages in comparison, buying in Taiwan, e-commerce in Taiwan, e-commerce in other countries. And one particular thing to note is the new tax. It's an import tax, basically, on e-commerce. So whenever people purchase overseas goods, when the amount of that purchase exceeds, I think it's 1,500 or 2,000, depending on what it is, then we're going to be charged taxes on that. But it seems to me there's a problem there because, like you said, your product just gets stopped somewhere, and then you got to fill out forms and
Correct.
go somewhere and pay money.
That is correct.
And that seems to stifle the e-commerce, the whole.
Right,
benefit.
and that's one of the problems here, I think, in Taiwan, especially for foreign businesses wanting to do business here, is because there's so much bureaucracy and things like that. The problem also is that this law just went into effect, I think, earlier this year, maybe at the beginning of 2018, and I don't know the exact amount, I'm not sure of it, so please don't anybody quote me on it, but the original amount was actually higher. So they've lowered the amount now to generate more revenue, I think, for the government.
I see.
And so that's kind of the sad thing.
These are almost protectionist policies sometimes, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. There's some products that you cannot get, for example, certain energy bars, Power Bar, for example, I was told before, is not allowed in Taiwan. And so I would have to have Power Bar shipped from the U.S. or have somebody bring it to me in their suitcase, and then I could go ahead and use it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fascinating.
It's just like the high import tax on foreign cars here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now, from this latest discussion, we have two questions. My first question is, what are your experiences in relation to purchasing things in Taiwan from Taiwan distributors, Taiwan sellers, and then attempting to purchase things from overseas sellers online? What would you say the different considerations are that you need to look at before you buy something online?
Okay, my question would be, when you're dealing with that 7-day turnaround in which you are able to take a product back to the seller. What has your experience been? Has the seller been willing to take it back, no questions asked, and replace it, or refund your money? Or have you encountered some kind of brushback from the seller, like implying that maybe you are at fault because you didn't use the product correctly, or you did something to cause harm to the product? What has your experience been?
Thank you very much. This concludes our lecture. Bye.